previously on the Originals. To show gratitude for Marcel's help and demonstrate a willingness to form an alliance, Elijah brought the dagger capable of killing Marcel and visited his home. However, he was ambushed by the Hollow. In a secluded, dimly lit cabin, Elijah is trapped within a magical circle cast by the Hollow. The thorn's poison has already deeply infiltrated his body. At this moment, the Hollow has already gathered 3 of the 4 bones needed for resurrection, with the last one in Hayley's possession. Because of this, she has temporarily preserved Elijah's life, intending to use it as leverage to secure her own rebirth. The once sacred and solemn church is now in utter disarray, with a large magical symbol drawn on the floor. Maxine informs Vincent that more and more witches are joining the Hollow's ranks. They believe the Hollow can help witches reclaim New Orleans from the vampires. As they're talking, the Hollow visits Vincent in person, still trying to persuade him to join her, but Vincent refuses her offer. The Hollow delivers a harsh ultimatum, insisting Vincent relay it to the Michelson family. Klaus has prepared an entire table of donuts for his beloved daughter, teaching her how to become a food connoisseur. Hayley asks Klaus if he has seen Elijah. Only then do they realize Elijah has been missing all night. Freya urgently casts a locator spell, but it fails to trace Elijah's whereabouts. Vincent arrives late and informs everyone that Elijah has fallen into the Hollow's hands. Hayley assumes the Hollow intends to trade Elijah for the last bone, but Hayley clearly underestimates the Hollow's ambition. The Hollow wants not only the bone but also Elijah's life. The Originals family reunites to urgently discuss a plan to deal with the Hollow. Vincent proposes that Marcel pretend to hand over the bone, then use Hayley's blood to stab the Hollow, while Vincent seizes the opportunity to seal the Hollow using Elijah's death. But Klaus argues that this plan won't save Elijah.
Klaus, Elijah's already dead.
Vincent advocates just giving up on Elijah, just like they gave up on Davina. However, this suggestion is rejected by everyone. Freya invites Vincent to join her in studying their mother's spellbook, hoping to find a loophole in the sacrificial spell. Vincent combs through all of Camille's dark magic items but finds nothing that can control the Hollow. Freya remembers the blue pendant that once saved Finn, realizing they could place Elijah's soul inside it. But Freya points out that Elijah has been poisoned for a long time and may not survive the process. Klaus steps forward and offers to take Elijah's place, confident that he can hold on until he is sealed inside the pendant, while Freya works on finding a cure for the thorn's poison. With no other options left, everyone reluctantly agrees to this risky plan. To save Elijah's life, Klaus willingly chooses to face death in his brother's place. Vincent remarks that Camille would be pleased to see Klaus making such a noble sacrifice. Klaus is a little moved. He puts the blue pendant around his neck. The group begins to execute their plan. Marcel approaches the Hollow, offering the final bone in exchange for Sophia's safety. The Hollow doesn't suspect a thing and agrees to the deal. Marcel tightly grips the dagger smeared with Hayley's blood. Klaus is prepared to meet his fate. Vincent has the thorns and the stake ready, waiting for the right moment. But then, the Hollow's followers arrive at the witches' cemetery, dragging Maxine with them. The sudden turn of events leaves Klaus and Vincent momentarily stunned.
Don't hesitate. Kill me now.
The Dark Witches attempt to disrupt Klaus's sacrifice. Vincent is reluctant to harm the innocent, but the witches refuse to listen to his pleas. Klaus no longer hesitates and, in a flash, unleashes a killing spree. The Dark Witches are no match for Klaus and fall one by one. Vincent also steps in to rescue Maxine. While Klaus was fighting, the male wizard got hold of the deadly thorns and threw them into the fire pit. This act means that Klaus's plan to sacrifice himself in place of his brother is completely shattered. As the Hollow is about to toss the bone into the tree Hollow, Marcel seizes the moment and plunges the dagger into the Hollow's chest. But even wounded, the Hollow tries to continue the resurrection ritual, forcing Marcel to snap her neck. Marcel gently lays Sophia's body down on the ground. Meanwhile, Elijah continues to writhe in agony within the magical circle, and the witches calmly proceed with the sacrificial preparations. Freya walks in her wolf form. Hayley suddenly kills a witch, and Freya takes down another, but the barrier around the magical circle prevents Freya from getting inside. Hayley quickly rushes in as well. Freya urgently sets up a spell formation, attempting to break the magical circle's confinement. Trapped within the circle, Elijah is still concerned about his brother's situation. Freya can't bring herself to tell him the truth, so she silently speeds up her incantation. But at this moment, the Hollow has already left Sophia's body. A blue light begins to glow behind Marcel, growing stronger, and in the darkness, the shadowy figure of a woman becomes increasingly visible. The Hollow, now gradually taking physical form, strikes Marcel, knocking him unconscious. Just as Freya's breaking spell starts to show results, the blue light draws nearer. Suddenly, the cabin door bursts open, and the hollow appears, attempting to attack Hayley. Thankfully, Klaus arrives in time to save Hayley. The Originals family's actions had all been foreseen by the hollow. In a panic, Klaus hands the pendant to his sister. With Elijah's life hanging by a thread, they must make a final, desperate attempt. Freya grasps the pendant and begins to chant a spell. Two powerful magics clash in the air, causing Elijah unbearable pain. The pendant slowly starts to emit a blue glow, and Elijah's life signs begin to fade. The hollow has achieved her goal and vanishes in an instant. Klaus rushes to his brother's side, pulling the thorns from his body. Hayley, heartbroken, caresses her lover's cheek. Klaus frantically asks if the spell worked, but Freya slowly extends her hand, revealing the shattered pendant. With nothing left but blood covering her palm, this outcome leaves everyone completely stunned. In the silent forest, a faint blue light flickers from within the tree hollow. A slender hand breaks through the tree's surface. The opening widens as a drenched woman crawls out of the hollow. She is the hollow's true form, the terrifying Inadu. At a lively party, Rebecca, dressed in a striking red gown, is casually speed dating and soon sets her sights on a burly partner. Cole, uninterested in romance, is simply enjoying his meal. Rebecca shares a passionate kiss with her date, but suddenly, he begins to feel unwell and quickly collapses, dead. Another vampire tumbles down the stairs. Vampires around them start dropping one by one. This sudden turn of events shocking everyone, causing a panic as people scramble to escape. Rebecca and Cole quickly realize that all the vampires who have died belong to Elijah's sire line. This means something has happened to Elijah. Klaus, gazing at his brother's body, pours out his heart, confessing that Elijah was his savior, his mentor, his confidant, and his greatest rival. He looks at his brother's body with deep affection.
This will not be your end. I will not rest until I bring you back.
Freya is trying to repair the shattered pendant, but she can't sense Elijah's presence within it. Klaus refuses to accept this, furiously demanding that Freya cast a spell to trace his brother's soul. Freya casts the spell again, but once more, finds nothing. Hayley and Freya are both heartbroken. Hope, confused and unaware, comes out to see what's happening. Hayley can't bear to let her daughter know the truth, but Hope places her hand on her aunt's shoulder. They heard Elijah's agonized roar. Elijah's soul is still within the pendant, but as it shattered into pieces, so did his soul. Klaus urgently insists that his sister repair the pendant, but Freya explains that she must first restore Elijah's soul to wholeness. It's an extremely complex spell. She must enter Elijah's mind, sift through 1,000 years of fragmented memories, and find the deepest corners of his subconscious. Otherwise, Elijah's soul will remain shattered forever. Rebecca and Cole rush back home at lightning speed. There's no time for a warm reunion. Klaus quickly fills his siblings in on their dire situation. Cole is consumed with thoughts of revenge, but Klaus insists they must first destroy all the thorns capable of killing the Originals. Freya has already marked the locations of the thorns on a map. The vengeful trio swiftly spring into action. Freya lies down within the magical circle, chanting continuously to send her consciousness into the pendant. Freya awakens in a pure white world, standing in a long corridor lined with closed doors on either side, each one containing a fragment of Elijah's consciousness. Freya wanders aimlessly down the corridor, randomly pushing open a door. This is the famous scene where Elijah pulls out his heart with his bare hands. A witch had plotted to kill Hayley's unborn child, driving the usually gentlemanly Elijah into a murderous rage. Freya calls out to her brother, but Elijah's consciousness quickly fades, forcing her to return to the hallway and open another door. Here, she finds Elijah in one of his most glorious moments, taking on 100 enemies single-handedly. With a blank expression, he cut down enemy after enemy, then vanished into thin air. Freya then opens a third door. This time, she steps into a joyful memory of the 4 original siblings gathered together, dressed in their finest, laughing and chatting happily. The beautiful scene moves Freya deeply, and she gently calls out to Elijah. Elijah finally responds to his sister's call, but the moment he sees Freya, he disappears once more. Freya wakes from the consciousness realm, and Hayley anxiously asks her what happened. Freya states that her power alone isn't enough. Hayley volunteers to enter Elijah's consciousness herself, determined that she can find him, but Freya explains that she needs to link with Hope's power. Hayley is worried about her daughter's safety, and Freya swears that she would never hurt her niece. Hayley agrees. Hayley steps into the magical circle and lies down. The pendant soon glows brightly and Hayley quickly enters the world of Elijah's spirit. But this time there was a sudden red door in the pure white world. Perhaps because the red door seemed so eerie, Hayley decides to bypass it. Hayley cautiously opens another door. It was the scene of their first meeting after Elijah had just awakened from 5 years of slumber. He gently draped a coat over her. Exuding tenderness and affection, Hayley calls out Elijah's name, hoping for a response, but Elijah looks at her blankly before disappearing again. With no other choice, Hayley retreats from that memory and continues to navigate the long corridor of memories. The red door appears in front of her once more. This is Elijah's darkest memory, revealing the hidden darkness beneath his gentlemanly exterior. The sight of the carnage on the floor leaves Hayley horrified. Elijah is in the farthest corner of the small room, brutally torturing a young girl. This kind of Elijah is definitely scary to Hayley. Hayley slowly backed away. Elijah seems to sense Hayley's presence, and in an instant, he teleports behind her, his consciousness dangerously unstable.
It's me. Elijah! Stop!
Hayley has no choice but to flee in panic. Meanwhile, Hope and Freya continue chanting, unaware that Hayley is in grave danger within the soul world. Hayley runs frantically through the forest, but she soon trips over the countless corpses scattered on the ground. The brutality of her lover exceeds her worst imaginings. After all, as an original vampire who has lived for 1,000 years, who doesn't have a few dark secrets? Elijah appears before Hayley. In the real world, Hayley's body begins to show signs of distress, prompting Hope to rush to her mother's side. Elijah, now fully engrossed in the pleasure of torturing his prey, is far more powerful than Hayley, seeing her former lover about to strike her with ruthless intent.
I'm just trying to bring you home.
Elijah remained unmoved by Hayley's words. Instead, he swiftly seized her by the throat. Hope desperately calls out for her mother, but suddenly, the candles maintaining the spell blow out, and Freya quickly stops the panicking Hope, telling her she will send her into Elijah's soul world. Freya instructs Hope not to open any doors, but to call out for her mother as loudly as she can. Hope agrees immediately. Freya pulled Hope over to Hayley and laid down. Hope snuggled close to her mom. Freya resumes her chanting, and the pendant glows brightly, transporting Hope into Elijah's soul world. Hope calls out for her mother, her small voice trembling with fear. Hayley quickly hears her daughter's voice. Worried about Hope's safety, Hayley desperately breaks free from Elijah's attack. Hope also hears her mother's voice and arrives in front of the red door. Just as Hayley reaches the red door, Elijah blocks her path, and they begin to fight again, listening to her mother's cries and pleas. Hope, feeling helpless, unleashes her own magic. A burst of light jolts Elijah awake. He stops his assault, realizing that he's harming the woman he loves most. Shaken, Hayley doesn't hesitate any longer and rushes through the red door to embrace her daughter tightly. Elijah slowly steps out from the red door, returning to his usual gentlemanly demeanor. It seems to be a metaphor that he is finally free from the bondage of red door. However, a rift has now formed between Elijah and Hayley. Still, the mission to save Elijah has succeeded. Hope is the first to return to the real world. Elijah tries to approach Hayley, but she instinctively takes a step back.
Please forgive me.
But Hayley doesn't respond. Freya and Hope continue chanting, and the pendant emits a brilliant light, bringing Hayley back to the real world. The pendant has been successfully restored. Within the pendant, Elijah stood silently, lost in thought, perhaps in reflection, perhaps in repentance. The flower shop owner suffered a heavy loss today as the vibrant, dewy flowers withered in an instant. Everywhere the girl went, flowers lost their color. She is none other than Inadu, the true form of the Hollow, who has brought the Originals family to their knees. Sophia, who was once possessed by the Hollow, remains in a coma. Vincent tells Josh to relay a message. If they can obtain the Hollow's blood, he can extract the magic within it to revive Sophia. Marcel, determined to save his lover, immediately decides to confront the Hollow alone. Josh gently suggests that Marcel might not be a match for the Hollow and urges him to seek help from the Originals family. But Marcel is resolute. Josh can only sigh deeply. The first thing the Hollow does after being reborn in human form is to kill all her followers. Marcel finds the Hollow. The Hollow offers to save Sophia, but only if Marcel pledges his loyalty to her. Marcel refuses the deal and charges at the Hollow, biting her to extract her blood. But the Hollow's blood is black, and instead of harming her, Marcel is overwhelmed with agony. The massive amount of toxin puts Marcel right down. The witches continue to guard the thorny stakes, but with a quick flash, Rebecca swiftly kills one of them. Another witch tries to flee but is blocked by Cole. Klaus quickly corners another female witch, his golden eyes burning with lethal intent. The original siblings' combat skills and teamwork are flawless, as they toss the thorny stakes into the fire. However, Cole grabs one of the witches, intending to interrogate him. Rebecca says there's no need, and Klaus urges his brother to hurry, but the male witch claims that the Hollow's power is unmatched, that not even the originals or the ancestors of the witches can defeat her. Cole's expression suddenly changes. Klaus swiftly throws a stake, ending the witch's life, but Cole realizes that the witch ancestors have returned, and he angrily demands to know why Klaus didn't tell him, why he was prevented from seeing Davina. Klaus replies that Davina is no longer the girl he remembers, and that the only ones who can connect with Davina are the 4 harvest witches that Elijah killed. Consumed with worry for his girlfriend, Cole abandons his family and turns to leave. Rebecca steps in to stop Klaus. Rebecca and Klaus continue to the next location, but unexpectedly find Marcel unconscious on the ground. Rebecca's heart is full of tenderness, though she doesn't know that Marcel has already found a new lover. Klaus points out that Marcel is carrying out some secret mission, which shows a lack of respect for their alliance. Marcel counters, saying he doesn't owe anyone an explanation for his plans. Rebecca interrupts their argument, reminding them that they still have to destroy the Hollow's weapons. Vincent needs the Hollow's magic, not necessarily her blood. This means that handing the thorns over to Vincent could also save Sophia, but Klaus refuses to give the stake to Marcel, feeling deeply hurt by Marcel's lack of trust. As the two are about to clash again, Rebecca steps in once more to mediate. Marcel assures them that he won't use the thorns to harm them. Rebecca gently persuades Marcel to join the hunting party and tells him the location of the last remaining thorn bush, but Marcel suddenly vanishes, determined to get the thorny stake before the original siblings do. Rebecca is left standing there, feeling disappointed.